Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you, Anne. It's wonderful to be here.
Yes, I remember meeting you some years ago on the South Coast.
Yes, that's right.
With Julie Ryder.
That's right,
and you just picked up some of your work.
Artwork there, I did. Yes.
And here you are.
I can't believe it. These few years, and I've worked really hard to get to this position.
Yes.
And I'm really thrilled to see the way the work's hung in this gallery, in this space.
The birds are singing, aren't they?
Outside they are indeed.
These messengers from the garden. And what is it about birds? Is it birds in particular that you have a love for?
Yeah, I do love birds. The soundtrack, because of the fires over summer, there's been lots of birds moving into the gardens, and one in particular, a grey butcherbird, had started calling, and it just took me back to childhood. So birds, their song can evoke memory, and sort of in a way a little bit of our hope. They take things with them, and I do love birds.
It's so nice to be taken back to our childhoods, I reckon.
Yeah, and so quickly, just snap of the finger, and I'd be at the beach, hearing those birds.
And where was your childhood?
In Melbourne. I grew up there in Melbourne. But we also were very lucky to have a little beach shack that had no electricity or running water to begin with. And my father, my mother would drop us off, and my father would look after us for 6 weeks. And 6 children ran wild for that time, and there was no one around. And he taught us a lot about the bush.
Now, what is it about embroidery? Because you seem to have a passion for embroidery, of the work I know of you, Sharon.
Yeah. So I've embroidered for a really long time. It was one of those things, and I'm starting to think, as I've written about it, that maybe because I loved it and my mum taught me to embroider, I was seen to be the only one in the family. And she was a working mother, and I think it was almost an attention thing to be able to have your mother full attention and me stitching. So I worked from hand stitching, and then as I got older, working on the machine. But I still hand stitch and love working on the craziness that machine embroidery can allow you. It's a drawing tool, essentially, for me. So I use it for drawing.
So did you learn on a treadle?
I did have one.
Me too.
Yeah. I still have one in my studio, actually, that works. So, yeah.
It's just that attention from your mum, treadling. So, yes, I have the same memories.
Yeah.
And the garden, is this your garden?
Yeah, generally it's my garden, and you don't have to go far, and particularly in this last 6 months. The gardens full of inspiration. Every day, every hour.
So I'd like you to talk a little bit about your process.
I keep a journal, write every day, and that has been a huge shift in my practice in the last few years. Drawing and writing, but writing, arguing with myself, talking to myself, discussing what I'm doing, and drawing as well, and making samples. Making samples is a new thing for me in the last 2 years, but my process has really sped up because I'm doing a lot of preparation work now. Whereas before it was, maybe I'm not such a great embroiderer, it didn't work out, and just chuck it away. Whereas now I work hard at the process.
It's such a good discipline.
Yeah, it is a discipline. I can see people, their eyes glaze over when I talk about that discipline, but really I think it pays off in the end. Put so many hours into stitching and money into materials that it's important to take account of that.
I'd be most keen for you to talk about these beautiful little ones behind you.
Yeah. So these ones, you can see they're really ordinary, the ordinariest things in my garden. The weeds, the dandelions, the blackbirds that have come in, and over here we have sparrows as well, just so ordinary. But we can find beauty in that ordinariness, and drawing and picking the dandelions, and just really having a close look to those sort of things. They're a weed, and it's part of the battle of the garden, and hence the gauntlet, the big gloves, were originally made of metal and part of the armour. So it's about that battle of the garden for that European garden. You know.
Sharon, would you spend a bit of time just giving us a bit of the detail of the process, particularly around being able to make such beautiful fine lace?
Yeah. So part of the process with this is drawing and reflecting and writing on it, but I'm always trying to get the fineness as the most minimal I can in the process. You know, how many times do I need to really draw that thing before it disintegrates? And that's what I'm trying to avoid, the disintegrations, but I'm not trying to be heavy-handed in doing that. And so it's playing with that fragility in these works. And you know, the fine dandelion, fluffy things, it's really hard to get to work with that. But you know, I've made a good effort, I feel. Yeah.
And you use dissolving clear?
Yeah, dissolving, and it's improved so much over the years. My big breakthrough, I think, with Solvi was having to buy 100 metres, and it was so cheap. But what it's made opened it up for me. I experimented. It wasn't precious anymore. I had this huge roll and just played with it, and that's really how I've experimented so much, is because I have access to so much.
And if you were to share your findings, what do you reckon you'd say to people?
Play is such an important thing. Often I've been doing online things and I think this isn't me, but giving it a go and playing with those processes is sort of almost shocking sometimes, to find that when I come back and be my own self within that work, I've discovered a lot more than I thought I did. Yeah.
Where's this body of work taken you to?
It's taken me really to the interior life, in fact, thinking really hard about the garden and myself within that garden, and I'm a little bit surprised how deep I've gone, and writing about it has helped that process.
Has that been a bit cathartic?
Yeah, I think so. Really cathartic. I think it's made my work more successful, and my confidence has increased enormously through that.
And where do you think you'll head off to in the next year or two, once you've had a rest and got over the last piece of work?
Where would I be heading to? I'm not really quite sure. I still would like to work with birds, but I don't think I'd work with the idea about the gloves more. But that's another thing to sit down and write about, where I'm going. I really haven't really had time to think about that.
And if people wanted to read your writing, is it on a blog?
Textile.org did a little interview with me, and that has quite a lot about that. There was one article in Textile Forum, but generally on my own blog that I maybe once a month update, and that's writing from my journal, really, so people can read there.
And lastly, what would be your advice to young artists who'd like to move into textiles?
Building your skills up. I don't even have to think about this. This is really drawing with my sewing machine, and I don't have to think how it's going to work, because I've worked and repeated things so often that I'm confident of my skills. So for me, building up really good skills is important.
Do you think that's mixed media, or trying to land on a space?
Trying to land on a space, I think you're right there.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you,
On this wet day, the birds have been singing outside for you. They must be happy to have all these birds
singing me in.
They are. It's beautiful. It's lovely to have your exhibition here.
Thanks.